Welcome to Society and Finance, Humanities 130. We're going to start off by going through the lecture notes that were covered in the first week of class. First of all, when you think of the word crime, most of us think of violent crime, murder, getting mugged or assaulted, our car being stolen. But the reality for most of us is that we are way more likely to be the victim of a white-collar crime. So let's discuss what is white-collar crime. First of all, it occurs in a legitimate occupational context. What that means is it usually occurs as part of a person's job. Secondly, it's motivated by money or professional recognition. And last, usually does not include violence. Here's some examples of white-collar crime. In the first example, a multimillionaire skims money from his company, stealing millions more than he officially makes. Jeffrey Skilling, who you'll see on the left at the bottom, he was the president of Enron, and essentially he created a shell corporation, meaning a company that didn't actually exist, that he then continued to bill, which showed that their revenues were really high, except they weren't a real company, so they didn't pay their bills. But based on his bonus structure, he got hundreds of millions of dollars because the revenue targets that he was supposed to hit, he hit by creating this fake company. The second example, and you'll see in the middle bottom, Maria Zafiro from Marchese Hospital Solutions is the president of a pharmaceutical company, and they have been accused of diluting cancer drugs to enhance its profits. So if you take a bag of chemotherapy drugs and you split it in half and fill the rest up with water and then sell 2 bags instead of 1 bag, you're literally doubling your profit. Third example actually happened to me. The bookkeeper at our homeowners association was stealing $100,000 so she could go gamble in Atlantic City. And because she had exclusive control over the checkbook, no one was there to audit her. I couldn't put her real picture up there. More examples. You'll see some doctors accept bribes to prescribe certain types of medication, and you'll see TAP Pharmaceuticals right now is going through a court case where they allegedly bribe doctors to write certain prescriptions. Another example is a company deceitfully markets its products. Airborne, it was a very popular product a few years ago, and it turns out that it doesn't actually work. So the $7 or $8 a box that you spend on Airborne, you're not getting anything for it. And eventually they were caught up with by the Federal Drug Administration, and they had to change their packaging. The last example I have here is contractors who were supposed to provide clean water in Iraq were paid millions of dollars, and the chemicals they supplied to clean the water were found to not be effective. So consequently, there are dozens of cases where people were poisoned by the bad water, or they got worms and were very, very ill. And the company, which is a subsidiary of Halliburton, which by the way was run by our former Vice President Cheney, Kellogg Brown and Root is dealing with a bunch of lawsuits now because their actions led to military men and women getting sick. Is it always well planned? Well, in some cases the crime is intentional, and in other cases the criminal activity is an unexpected consequence of a questionable financial decision. The example I give is a few years ago in China. Manufacturers added a compound called melamine to baby formula. And what it did was it gave a false positive on protein. Essentially what they were trying to do was say that their product had more protein than any other product. And as a parent, you want your child to grow up healthy and strong, so you know protein is good for them. So all these parents went out and they bought this baby formula with the extra protein. Except melamine provides the false positive. It looks like it has a lot of protein, but it's not. Anyway, the long and the short of it is that a few months after this product came out, it was discovered that the melamine was causing kidney problems. 6 babies died and 54,000 more were hospitalized. Now, this happened in China, but what they were also doing was adding melamine to dog food, and this dog food went into Canada, and all these dogs ended up dying because of this dog food. So it became an international crisis, and the way that they dealt with this is the president of the company was actually put to death. So the Chinese are more upset that he got caught than what he was doing. Now, size doesn't really matter with white-collar crime. Although the crimes can be very different, all of these crimes are white-collar. The main point here is that somebody trusted the person or persons who perpetrated the fraud. And that's why our textbook is called Trusted Criminals. You have to trust someone to give them your money, whether it's the bank, whether it is an employee, whether it is your cousin who has a great investment option. You trust them, and that's why you hand over your hard-earned cash. Now, the actual cost of crime. First of all, this slide does not appear in your slideshow. I would like you to make sure you write this down in your notes because I want you to really remember these numbers. Street crime costs about $15 billion per year, compared to white-collar crime at $200 billion per year. That is a huge differential. But the reality is that most of us know street crime really well because it usually involves violence, and violence scares us. Nobody wants to get a black eye or a bloody nose or get shot. Whereas white-collar crime definitely doesn't usually involve violence, and so that doesn't seem to be such a big deal because no one's getting killed. Now we're going to go over the different types of white-collar crime. First, corporate crime. These are illegal acts committed by employees or officers of a corporation to promote corporate or personal interests. So, for example, the corporate crime that I was alluding to in a previous slide that Enron perpetrated by creating this false company is exactly that. It was an illegal action. Number 2, occupational crime. Illegal or greed-driven activities committed within the context of a legitimate occupation. So when people pad their expense accounts or they jack up the price for a particular item that can be purchased in the regular store for X amount, those are all occupational crimes. Next, we have governmental crime. Government officials or a government agency perpetrate activities that are illegal and or harmful. And essentially what that means is that the government does something that is illegal. So over the past few months, there's been a lot of conversation about how the National Security Agency has been tapping into people's emails and phone calls and text messages. And whether or not they're illegal is currently under discussion. However, in certain cases, these have proved to be very harmful. For example, it was demonstrated that the United States was spying on the private phone calls of the leader of Germany, Angela Merkel, and the leader of Brazil, Dilma Rousseff, and these two country leaders are very angry at the United States, and they are not inclined to listen to our explanations because it's illegal. We shouldn't be doing it. The reality, however, is most countries are in fact spying on one another. I don't want you to think that the United States is a terrible country. We're just doing what everybody else is doing, but we got caught. Number 4, state corporate crime. This is a hybrid criminal activity that links both private enterprise and government agents. So, for example, if a oil company bribes a senator or a governor to get a certain contract, that is a white-collar crime. Number 5, enterprise crime. This is cooperative criminal activity between legitimate businesses and organized crime. So, for example, if a criminal from the mafia, either the Italian mafia, the Russian mafia, various and sundry gangs, are interacting with a legitimate business to launder money, that's an enterprise crime. Now, we also have entrepreneurial crime, and these are those scams and frauds that pretend to be a legitimate business but are not. So when you get those emails telling you that this particular stock is going to go through the roof and you have to just invest by clicking this link, that's a scam. They're going to take your money, walk away, and you're going to end up with nothing. Number 7 is technocrime, and this is white-collar criminal activities perpetrated using technology. If I can get into your bank account and hack all your information, your social security number, your birth date, your mother's maiden name, your bank account number, I can take ownership of your identity. And that's where technocrime really becomes a huge problem, because it also involves identity theft. Last but not least is something that we called avocational crime. And these are crimes committed by white-collar employees that are not specifically related to their job. Tax evasion being one of the most popular. Also purchasing stolen goods. Back in the old days, we used to call it, something fell off a truck and somebody would be selling it. So you had these guys who would show up at your doors selling a TV that fell off a truck, and instead of spending $500, you could get it for $200 because it's all profit for the guy who stole it. Now, one of the most important elements to understand in any business education is the term risk. And risk is essentially a gamble on what you're willing to lose to make money. So, for example, let's say your long-lost uncle dies and leaves you $1 million. Now, you can take that $1 million and you can invest it in something really safe. You could buy stock in a company like Google or Amazon or Microsoft, or you can invest the money in something like a new business, a new restaurant, which may or may not be profitable. Now, if you want to be safe, then you go for small risk. So you would do something safe like invest in Google, and you'll make a little bit of profit every year, but you're never going to be a gazillionaire overnight. On the other hand, let's take that $1 million and we buy an oil well that may or may not provide any oil. If the oil well comes in and you can make tons and tons of oil or bring it out of the ground, you're going to make a ton of money. However, the risk is much higher that there's no oil and you're going to lose that $1 million. So the rule of thumb is the higher the risk, the more likely you'll make a ton of money if there is a profit. If it's a small risk, you're going to make a little bit of money, but you're not going to lose your money. Low risk is safe. So in white-collar crime, what you're essentially doing is gambling on getting caught. So, has the government tried to stop white-collar crime? They know what's going on. The issue is that it depends. They will, in fact, intervene and try and manage some risks. So, for example, the Environmental Protection Agency and OSHA, which stands for Occupational Safety and Health Administration, were developed to prevent corporations and their officers from taking risks that would adversely affect the public. So, for example, for the EPA, let's say that a company is dumping their waste into the stream next to the company. That stream goes into the Delaware River, which can lead to the water supply for the Poconos. So that poison that the company is dumping is eventually going to make its way into the water source. This is where the EPA comes in and they shut down the company and won't let them put any more poison in the water, and then they have to pay to get it cleaned up. That's a case where the public could adversely be affected. And people are going to freak out because once you poison well water, once you get people sick, That's when people get really, really upset. But for the most of us, and for most of the white collar crime, the government is not working hard to stop it.